I'm Grace Stiller, and the roles that I have in the community are with nonprofit engagement, and I am involved with environmental nonprofits, with social services and humanities nonprofits, and an art nonprofit. So that's how I'm involved in the community. I have various interests that have led me to these three areas, and but the strongest or the area where I spend the most time is in the environment.
Share early memories of your childhood.
Born over on the coast of Washington, a small little town called Cosmopolis, about 1,000 people. And I lived with my mom and dad, my sister, and later an adopted brother. And also my grandmother, who was born in Sweden, lived with us while I was growing up. This little town that we called Kazi, where I was raised, is a very small town. People kept their doors open. They didn't lock their doors at night. Everybody knew everybody. And it was an amazing little town that was very well financed because of a pulp mill. At the time, it was owned by Weyerhaeuser. And so with this little tiny town, we had amazing services. We had our own police force. We had our own library. We had our own city hall. We had well-funded recreational programs. We had a state-of-the-art sewer plant that refined the sewage to drinking water. We had parks. We had streets that were paved, and every block had sidewalks and curbs. And that happened because of the revenue paid to this little city from the one main industry of pulp mill. So it's a pretty amazing story for a little town.
What historical events had the most impact on you while growing up, and how did it affect you?
The events that impressed upon me when I was growing up, probably the first one, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, of course, the moon landing, and then later in life, while I was in high school, was the Vietnam War. And the Vietnam War, of course, gave me quite a worldview and a political view. So that's about the time that I also got involved with politics.
What does a healthy community look like?
As far as a healthy community, it kind of encompasses my main interests of art, environment, housing. So a healthy community has all of these components. And so being involved in the community, I try to be involved in those areas just to be part of and help promote a healthy community. I would say I've always had an interest in art. In fact, that was one of my majors in college, along with education. And as far as the environment, one of the things that I studied in college was environmental sciences. But back then it was called earth sciences and not environmental sciences. So I've always had an interest in environment, art, and of course, housing. And that's really come to the forefront with the situations that we're dealing with now with homeless issues and high housing costs. So when a community is healthy, I think all of these facets intersect. People can afford housing. they find art in their community. It's a healthy, safe environment that's not only good for them, but for the planet. So yeah, those things are really important to me. And that's how I would define a healthy community.
Share about current projects you're working on.
Projects that I'm currently working on. The first one is with the West Seattle Time Bank that includes the west side all the way down to Des Moines. So it's the west side communities, even though it's called West Seattle Time Bank. And it's a group of people that do things for one another and do things for the community through nonprofit engagement. And I'm currently on the board and working with other board members to develop a strategic plan, since we've been operating for about 5 years now, and it's time to do a strategic plan. Another thing that I'm working on is a support role for the Washington Native Plant Society, Puget Sound chapter. So I'm on the board there, and we always have a big fundraiser of native plants, and that's coming up, and it's going to be online this time, so it's a little different learning curve. And I'm also this weekend, in fact, potting up bare root native plants for the Nature Stewards program plant sale. So I founded that nonprofit in 2008, and it was started because students needed community service to graduate from high school. And my son, who was in high school, really had no place to volunteer. There were too many restrictions, and they wanted more adults and long-term commitment. So I got together with a couple other people that love the environment, and we started the Weed Warriors Nature Stewards program by removing weeds in public parks, and it really took off. So that's where I spend a large majority of my time. And the Nature Stewards program is currently working in Seattle along Myers Way at the homeless camp, or homeless village, I should call it. It's a transition village for people going into regular housing. And we're restoring a wetland that's right next to the property that's owned by the city of Seattle. And we started that in June, and we've been working. It's been tremendous. I've got volunteers and the villagers that work in this project. We're removing blackberries. That's the major invasive plant. We've removed some other noxious weeds as well. And we're into the phase of planting. So we've so far put 120 trees on that site that we're restoring, and we've removed blackberries from 33,000 square feet of area. It's a huge project. So that's ongoing, and it will be ongoing until June. And I'm also involved with another environmental group at the New Start Community Garden. And I was involved with that garden in the very beginning. The Nature Stewards program became a fiscal sponsor when they wanted to receive fruit trees for the garden. And so I got involved, and I'm on the board, and we've had grants from the Port of Seattle to do projects there, which have been fantastic. And we're currently working on a project that involves art. It's art for the garden fence that's open to the Highline students participating, as well as members of the community. And this is a special project that will have art placed on the community garden fence, and it'll be curated by our diverse community. And so I'm very excited to launch this program with the Highline School District and other partners too, including Burien Arts, the National Wildlife Federation, and Southwest Youth and Family Services. So here again, art and the environment are intersecting.
What professional accomplishments are you most proud of and why?
The Weed Warriors Nature Stewards program received acknowledgement as a conservation person. And let's see, a couple years ago now, but I was totally floored that we received that acknowledgement for the Western states of the National Wildlife Federation. So I'm proud of that.
What inspires you to do this work?
You know, I guess it just kind of is internal, something that just happens. You see a need, or you want to meet a need, and so then I get involved however I can.
How has your approach to activism changed over the course of your career?
When climate change came to the forefront, and one of my heroes is Catherine Hayhoe, who's an atmospheric scientist that is so incredible. And she has just made a real big difference in understanding climate change. And so I started some classes with the King County Library System on climate change based on what she was putting out there. And so we talked about climate change, and actually got a couple attorneys that came to the meetings and talked about the lawsuit where the youth are suing the government for not addressing climate change. And so with those classes, that was a real shift. And of course, tied to the environment again, the use of fossil fuels that are degrading our planet and wrecking the atmosphere and throwing climate all out of whack and causing weather weirding all over the place. I got involved with protests. So I protest out on the streets in front of banks, and trying to do what I can. I carry signs that the nature stewards have made signs for other people to carry signs, protesting what's happening, calling for citizens to be involved. And in the past, I probably never would have done that. So yeah, my approach to activism has changed in that way, that I'm out there carrying signs where I wouldn't have before. So,
What advice do you have for the next generation of activists?
get involved, be interested, be active, do what you can, just live in the moment and make connections with other people that maybe have the same interest, and just do what you can.